Ooh, Parshas Vaera is the best. It begins with drama and ends with drama. It's like the middle section of a play, the middle section of a book, the middle section of a flick, a movie, in which all the drama, all of the rising action is building and building, and all of a sudden, before you reach the climax and understand what happens in the end, before the falling drama concludes, where everything is revealed and you understand what happens, our Parsha ends, and you have to live until next week to figure out what happens between the standoff between Pharaoh and Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu, who's representing Hashem, standing there before Pharaoh. Parshas Vaera begins. You have to know how it begins before how we discuss the following idea for this week's Parsha. It begins how Hashem reveals himself to Moshe and says, I promised the forefathers, I promised them things. But now, I'm about to follow through on my promises. I'm about to keep my promises. Hashem reaffirms Moshe's mission. Even though Moshe hesitates because of his uncircumcised lips, Hashem says, go and tell Pharaoh that let thy people go. Pharaoh says no. And he'll say no 7 times in our Parsha. And you'll witness 7 makos in our Parsha. You'll witness that all the water in Egypt turns to blood. The fish die. It's not inconspicuous, unsuspecting detail that the fish die. It's because it's not just white turning to red water, but it's actual real blood. Fish die in real blood. We hear about Sephardeia and this tremendous alligator-like Godzilla creature that comes out, and the Egyptians hit him until multiple Sephardeia frogs are crawling around Eretz Mitzrayim and leaping inside of Pharaoh's bed. Think of it and the story as an adult, not as a child. We hear about the lice, in which the magicians admit that this is the finger of Hashem. We can't recreate this. We don't know how this was done. This isn't some sort of magic trick. The Arov, the dangerous swaths of animals invade Egypt. Except Goshen. Goshen, that small little neighborhood inside of Mitzrayim like Lakewood, where the Kollel rabbis and Klal Yisrael live. There's no wild animals there. The plagues continue. Dever, an animal epidemic. Unrelatable, but definitely sounds treacherous. Shechin, boils. The pain of the skin. Even sorcerers can't stand before Moshe Rabbeinu. Everyone in unbearable pain with these boils. Shechin moves into Barad. Fire and ice together falling from the heavens, smashing anything and everything in their sights. Pharaoh relent. Pharaoh give up. He won't. He says no. And sometimes he even pretends to say yes before he switches his mind and says no. But don't make fun of Pharaoh. Many of us have also committed to things. But then as soon as the pain that was the impetus for the commitment subsided, we too relinquished and revoked our commitments. But today, for today's podcast, I'd like to point out to you an interesting pasuk that holds with it an interesting Rashi, followed by an interesting question from the Gaivid of Yisrael, of Yerushalayim, to suggest a new answer that was put forth by Reb Volba, Reb Yaakov Volba of Houston, Texas, and then drill home a makabeh patish on the idea that will help us in our lives, help you tomorrow. It should help us follow Hashem's Torah better and close more deals. How does that sound? Parsha, right at the beginning is where we'll begin. Where Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Hashem, I don't want to go to Pharaoh. It's not going to work. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Hein b'nei Yisrael lo shamu elai. The Jewish people, they're not going to listen to me. Ve'ech yishma'eni Pharaoh. How could Pharaoh listen to me? V'ani aral sofosayim. I'm tongue-tied. Moshe Rabbeinu has some sort of speech hindrance. But Hashem responds, you have nothing to worry about, Moshe. Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron vayitzavim el bnei Yisrael vel Pharaoh Melech Mitzrayim lahotzias bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. So Hashem spaketh. He spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in regard to the Israelites and Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, instructing them to deliver the Israelites from the land of Egypt. It's kind of unclear how Hashem responded to Moshe's complaint of that no one's going to listen to me. Rashi explains that Moshe had 3 questions. What an incredible example of how the Torah is a closed book to us without the guiding pen of Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki, Rashi. When Hashem answered, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron, that was the answer to Moshe's first question, which was that how can I talk in front of Pharaoh if I have uncircumcised lips? Rashi says, Levisha Omar Moshe ani aral savosayim saraf lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Aaron lios lo lepeh ulemelitz. The beginning of the pasuk is Hashem's first answer to Moshe's first question. I'm going to join in the club, Aaron, so you won't have to speak. That's why it says, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron. If you missed that word, that's the answer to Moshe's first problem, that he can't talk the way that he believes people will listen to him. The pasuk continues, Vayitzavim el bnei Yisrael, and command the Jewish people, or command that the Israelite nation, that they should go. Rashi says, this is answer number 2 to Moshe Rabbeinu's problem. That Klal Yisrael is not going to listen to me. What does Hashem say? Deal with them in a gentle manner. Be patient with them. Tolerate them, even though they maybe will harass you. A Jewish leader needs to know that he has to endure the harassing, and he needs to do what needs to be done, even if it means that his congregation will verbally abuse him. Some real positive affirmation and a real clarifying of a Jewish leader's role. And lastly, Rashi says, Ve'el Paro Melech Mitzrayim, go and tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. What does that mean? What was Hashem's answer to Moshe's third problem? Says Rashi, Tzivam alov l'chalek lo kavod b'divrayim. Show respect to Pharaoh in all that you speak. Give him kavod. Treat the king of Egypt with honor. That's why the pasuk says, to Pharaoh, Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt. The dagesh, the impressing upon of the pasuk, the dagesh, the emphasis, that's the word, that the pasuk is making is treat him like a king. Rav Moshe Sternbuch, he asked the question that you should be asking yourself. He also asks it when again the topic comes up in the future in Parshas Bo. When again Moshe is told to speak to Pharaoh as the Melech Mitzrayim and lachalok lo kavod, to speak to Pharaoh as a king, give him honor. Rav Moshe Sternbuch, the Gaivad of Eretz Yisrael, the incredible Ben Acher Ben of the Vilna Gaon, somebody who's written Sefarim upon Sefarim, most notably the Moadim Uzmanim Utshuvos V'Anhagos. Moshe Sternbuch, born in 1926, the prominent British-born Israeli Haredi Rav and Posek. I have a Sefer Tam V'Das here. Gadol Adar. She'en kedu gemasai ad yomais Yehoshua ben Nun, a holy, holy sage that still lives in this generation, he asked the question that you need to be asking. How could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to show honor to a king who is wicked, a king who's a Rasha? How can it be that Moshe Rabbeinu, the answer to his problems, were to show honor to an individual who committed infanticide? Wait, infanticide. Neonaticide. That means killing babies. How can it be that Moshe Rabbeinu was told to act benevolently, kindly, positively, courteously, honorably to an individual who threw living, healthy, happy Jewish babies before and after their bris, younger than a year old, into the Nile? He wrecked the bodies of the Israelites with grueling and illegal labor. This person should be treated like the man whose name should be erased and should burn in hell, Hitler, Yamach Shemo. And yet here we're told to walk in and treat him with honor? Eyech Yitochen. How can this be? And to answer it, we dive into the deep waters of Torah. He brings a Zohar, a fascinating Zohar. How Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda were sitting and learning Torah in front of Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Yehuda said, Vayakam Melech Chadash, that a new king arose over Egypt. That's at the very beginning, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Ches, of the story of the Exodus. The sages, they point out, and Rabbi Yehuda said, that let me explain to you what it means a new king arose over Egypt. It means that he arose, Vayakam, he got up and arose on his own accord. He was lowly, and he arose. He was not fitting for kingship, but he arose. How? The Zohar teaches, Rabbi Yehuda continues, but through wealth he arose. With power, with money. Like a politician who became the leading politician because of the wealth that he had to buy his way to power. Reb Shimon says, I have a good connection, a tzushtel. It is just like the same manner of Achashverosh, who was not fitting for kingship, but he arose on his own accord. And thus we see that Pharaoh, just like Achashverosh, was not worthy of reigning, but through his own power, of his own wealth, did he establish himself as king over Egypt of Vayakam Melech Chadash. Rav Moshe Sternbuch therefore advances the idea to answer the problem as to how could it be that they were commanded to honor this person. Rav Sternbuch says a chiddush, a novel idea. He says it's because to make a statement, the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded Moshe and Aaron to show him kingly honor. Why? To emphasize that Pharaoh's downfall would not be because he was subject to his inferiority or lack of royal legitimacy. It wasn't that he wasn't a good king or that he was not a rightful king, but no, he was a legitimate heir to the throne. How? Moshe and Aaron, they recognized him as the king. They treat him as the ruler. Why? Because if God were to destroy a king who was illegitimate, a lowly king, would that be much of a statement by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Observers might attribute his fall to his weakness or his lack of political stability. So we have a solution. Moshe and Aaron are told to treat Pharaoh with the full royal protocol. Treat him as a melech. Elevate his status. Validate his kingship. Do it publicly. This way, eventually when Pharaoh should fall defeated, it would be clear that it wasn't because he was the king usurper who bought his way to power, but rather, and specifically, because this person messed with the Jewish people, with the Am Hashem. Hence, the Pasuk says Rav Moshe Sternbuch, that they were told to go and give honor to the Melech Pharaoh, so that it will be clear when his downfall happens that it was Hashem who took him out and took out the king of Egypt. Really an incredible chiddush. I'd like to turn the swivel chair to a different teleprompter, a different camera, if you will, to think not in the shallow waters of Torah, but just if this is the deep waters of Torah, I'd like to swim back into the calm and more understandable and simple waters of the Torah to try to extract a plain point, but a powerful point to answer this question. I'd like to advance Reb Yaakov Volba's answer to the way he understands this Rashi, and then try to sprinkle it with some, Torah's Chaim, some Torah that may be helpful for us in our daily lives, that helps us to live better. And I'd like to present the following. That maybe when Hashem tells Moshe, go with Aaron and treat Pharaoh. Treat him like a melech, Rashi says. Tzivam alav, l'chalek lo kaved b'divrayim. Maybe that's not for installing him as the king. Maybe it's simply advice for how to get people to listen to you. Maybe it's Moshe Rabbeinu was being given the key to how finally Moshe will be listened to by Pharaoh. He says, I'm tongue-tied. He says, no one's going to listen to me. He says, Pharaoh's not going to listen to me. And you know what Hashem says? Treat him with dignity. Treat him like a melech. Because you know what, people? When you treat people like a king, they listen to you. That's the secret. If you want to get people to listen to you, treat them with honor. When you try to force your way and try to bang down the doors of people's beliefs and try to convince them of how you're proper and how they need to sell their house and how your political belief is the truth and how your way of learning the Gemara is the proper way, they just build up walls and want nothing to do with you. But when you call them a melech, when you give them the honor that they may deserve, or maybe they don't deserve, you are so much more likely to get an understanding, open-minded response from the seller or from your chavrusa. You're not sugarcoating it. Don't think of it as a bad thing that you're buttering people up to just simply try to get them to listen to you. But you're simply treating them with kavod habrios. You want people to listen to you? Treat them with kavod habrios, because now they feel listened to. Maybe they even feel represented. They feel like a mensch in front of you. So they now want to deal with you in a way that's menschlich. It's the same way you would want to be treated. You kind of simply, when confronted with someone that treats you dignified, you kind of simply open up and relent and like them. And maybe even want to listen to them and follow them and be loyal to them because they treated you like a melech. They treated you properly. The Ramban says like this. The Igeres Ramban, it says, I took the English translation to make it more direct, even though the Hebrew is otherworldly. It's Lashon HaKodesh, but therefore, the Ramban says to his son, I'll now explain to you how you always behave humbly, speak gently at all times, with your head bowed, your eyes looking down to the ground, and your heart focusing on God. That's what we always say here. Head down, heart up. That's the way to live, but don't look at the face of the person to whom you're speaking. Consider everyone as a greater than you. Everyone as greater than you. If he is wise or wealthy, you give him respect. If he's poor, or you're wealthier, smarter, wiser, more courageous and more creative than he, well, then consider yourself to be more guilty than he is. And that he is more worthy than you, since when he sins, it's by accident. But now that I'm smarter, I do it knowingly, so therefore turn the tables and imagine that your friend is now smarter or more righteous than you. The Ramban is telling us that you deal with everybody in this most focused, pleasant, gentle, honor-giving way. That's the way you deal with people. And maybe that's also what we see here is the way that people actually listen to you. You see over and over that the most influential figure in the history of the world was Abraham Avraham Avinu, the first of the trifecta of our avos, Avraham, Abraham, our forefather. Over and over, we're told how he was Mekarev, Jew upon Jew, built legions, built bastions, built hotels built on Torah and Ruchnius, motels, eshels, helping people, teaching people, getting them to say brachos. Perak Yud Ches, look at it, between Pasuk Beis and Pasuk Ches. We get a clear description how Avram lavishly honors his guests. He runs, he serves, he bows, he offers comfort. Chazal say people listen to Avram. His derech eretz, his kavod abrios, is what created his influence. And maybe the way he treated people, as the Melech Mitzrayim, shall we say, is what very much attributed to his influential and charismatic being mekarev of people and persuading them to the path of good. How powerful would it be for us to adopt an interpersonal relationship type of motto and method like this? How powerful would it be if we treated our spouses like kings? You wouldn't just get them to listen to you, which would be great, but you'd also live in a life that's filled with shalom bayis. You know it. You know it. You know it. The Rambam says, Hilchos Ishos, Yud Ches. Tesvav, Yud Tes, 15:19. V'chein tzivu chachamim, how should a husband and wife live? Sheyeh adam mechabed es ishto, yoser migufo v'avoso kegufo. Man should honor his wife more than his own person. Love her as he loves his own person. If he has financial resources, then you should offer her benefits in accordance with his resources. Buy her a designer coat if you can. Take her out for a fancy dinner if you can. Don't put superfluous measure of fear over her. Talk to her gently. Be neither sad nor be angry. Treat her with honor. That's what it says. Mechabed es ishto. That's how you treat your wife. And then also maybe she'll listen to you. And it goes the other way. V'chein tzivu al ha'isha sheyeh mechabed es his ba'ala biyoser midai. The words of Maimonides, a woman's commanded to honor her husband exceedingly and to be in awe of him. How many women can say that they're in awe of their husband? And don't say that, oh, it's because he is the one who acts lowly, so I treat him that way. It's not an excuse. If someone acts a way that they're not supposed to, it doesn't validate you to act in a way that violates the Torah. She should carry out all of her deeds according to his directives, considering him to be an officer or a king. Hear that? V'yiyeh be'eineha k'mosar o melech. She should follow his desires in his heart and shun everything that he disdains. That's the custom of holy, pure Jewish women and men in their marriages. And these are the ways that will make their marriage pleasant and praiseworthy. When you treat people with honor, things work out. And maybe that was Hashem's advice. It was some communication advantages and advice to Moshe Rabbeinu. Go and talk to Pharaoh. And talk to who? Melech Mitzrayim. Give him honor. L'chalik lo kavod. Because when you give people honor, maybe they open up to you and want to let the people go. When you give him honor and say, wow, Pharaoh, what an amazing Melech. Look at what you've built here. And now I have an honest question. There's someone named HaKadosh Baruch Hu who created the whole world, and he'd like his blessed and precious nation to be let out of bondage now. Would you mind to allow them to go out? There's a chance that happens if you treat someone in a dignified, honorable way. There are times in our lives that this will help us. Even when you meet strangers, treat them in a dignified, melech-like way, because the Ramban says that's the way that we deal with people. If you can't, just remember that their sins are accidents and my own sins are on purpose, because I know better, and I know better than him. In your marriages, the way you deal with your children. We don't have time to go on the rant of how we must treat our kids like they're not just kids, they're adults. They pick up on things, and we need to treat them as such. Talk to them in a mature way, and don't keep pushing off the chinuch until they get older. They see what's going on, and you can treat them in an honorable way. They understand things. Of course, the way we treat our wives, our spouses, our husbands, the way you treat your parents, the way you treat anybody, even a prospective seller on the phone. You want somebody to listen to you? Hashem told Moshe, go and speak to the Melech Mitzrayim. Because when you give people honor, l'chalek lo kavod, there's a serious chance that they'll actually listen to you.
Kilam kedoshim